Hi, welcome back to Halloween House. So, we're into the, unusual stories, and this one caught our attention. It's about a very unusual serial killer who basically studied how to be a serial killer by reading the book Mindhunter by John Douglas, and I have read that book. It's amazing. It came out in 1995. Do yourself a favor and go ahead and read it. And he also studied being a serial killer by studying the FBI profiles of serial killers. And he was different from your standard serial killer, and he didn't have any victim type. He merely picked them by opportunity.
So his first suspected victim was a young girl in 1996. He was in the area that she was killed and may have had contact with her, but he never admitted to her murder.
And his first admitted victim was assaulted in 1997 or 1998 in Washington. And he did let her go, and he regretted it, and he vowed that he would never let anyone go again.
Yes, which shows where he was headed.
Yes.
He is suspected of murdering at least 4 people in Washington state between 2001 and 2006, including a couple that was shot in 2006 and killed while hiking. He says he killed someone in 2009 on the East Coast and left the body in New York State, but he would not reveal the identity of this victim. In 2011 in Vermont, he killed Bill and Lorraine Curriers. And in 2012, he assaulted and killed barista Samantha Koenig in Alaska, which was his last known victim.
And Israel Keyes was born in 1978 in Cove, Utah. And he was born to parents who didn't believe in government intervention, public schools, or modern medicine. Him and his 9 siblings did not have birth certificates or social security's number, and they lived without heat and water in a tent for several years until a cabin was built by his father.
So very unusual upbringing.
Very rural.
Yes. At age 10, Israel started breaking into homes to steal guns, and he also was finding it fun to start fires. And at 14, he was torturing pets, which seems to be a common link upon a lot of serial killers. But he also enjoyed sitting in the woods for hours without moving, which is very odd. I mean, kids do weird things, but
not that weird.
That's pretty weird.
Yeah.
The family did move out of Utah and went to Colville, Washington. They left the Church of Latter-day Saints and joined a fundamentalist church, which is one that's recognized as a domestic terrorist organization. And later they moved to Maine, so they took a big hike to go to an Amish community.
And he joined the Army in 1998, and he was dismissed or discharged in 2001. And at that time he moved to Washington with a girlfriend and had a child. And in 2005, he met another woman online, and he moved to Alaska to be with her.
And so that's looks like when he started to really put things together as to how he wanted to stage all of these murders. He had some rules that he tried to follow, but in the end, he lost all control, and he broke them, and that's when he got caught. Some of the rules were not to target anyone local, and to make sure he picked victims at random.
And he did, on his travels, he would leave buckets that he would call kill kits or kill caches, and he left those in various locations so that he could come back to them to use in crimes. So he wouldn't be caught, purchasing these items locally. And in these buckets was guns, ammo, shovels, zip ties, Drano, and money. And 2 kill caches or kill kits have been found.
He often looked for victims on trails, campgrounds, in parks, and even cemeteries, isolated places that maybe no one would notice him. Or he would target homes that had attached garages, no pets, and no kids to lessen the chance of being noticed or caught. Of the many murders he is suspected, he did go into detail about a few to the investigators while he was in custody.
He broke into the garage of Bill and Lorraine Currier, and then they had easy access to get into their home. He took the couple in their vehicle to a remote farmhouse where he murdered Bill and he sexually assaulted and then murdered Lorraine, and their bodies have never been recovered.
Pretty sad.
Very sad. And this murder probably would have gone unsolved forever had he not admitted to it.
That's right. In the murder of Samantha Koning, he broke all of his rules, and this is when he was actually caught. Samantha was a barista at a local coffee shop, and one night she was closing and he approached. She thought that she was being robbed. He asked her to turn off the lights, and what's really odd is right next to the light switch in this coffee shop was a panic button, and she didn't push it.
Very sad. Very. So he then zip tied her hands and he took her to his truck. She did try to escape, but he caught her. They left, and then they returned when he realized that her phone was still at the coffee shop. When they retrieved the phone, her phone, he texted Samantha's boyfriend and the owner of the coffee shop that she had a bad day at work and she'd be leaving for the weekend.
Mm-hmm. He then took her to his own home, and outside the house there was a shed. It was kind of off the driveway, and he put her in the shed and drove to her house because he wanted her ATM card, and it was in a truck in her driveway. So while he was there getting the card, her boyfriend came out and confronted him, and when the boyfriend went inside to get help, he took off and managed to get away. He went to the bank to test that ATM card to make sure the PIN number that she gave him was correct, and proceeded to go back to his shed and unfortunately raped her and killed her at that point.
And he left her body in the shed, and then he traveled to Texas and Louisiana, and then he went on a Caribbean cruise.
Wow.
And then, after the cruise, he came back to Texas, where he robbed the bank, burglarized the home, and set the home on fire, and then he returned home to Alaska.
Very ambitious trip.
Yes, very.
Once he got home, he thawed out her body enough to open her eyes, and he put makeup on her and took a photo and sent it in to her family with a ransom note asking for $30,000. At that point, he disposed of her body in a local lake, and it was later recovered.
Her father did manage to raise the money, and it was put into an account that was attached to the ATM card of Samantha's.
And then when he found out that the money was going to be there, he flew to Nevada, got a rental car, and proceeded to make withdrawals while traveling from Nevada to Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. And one of the banks that he was at, their camera picked up a image of a white Ford Focus. And so they kind of thought that that was connected to this whole crime spree, but they couldn't pin it on anybody. While he was in Texas, he got pulled over for speeding, and he was driving a white Ford Focus. So the officer, whether or not they even put two and two together at this point, figured something was up, and he searched the car. And in the car, he found Samantha's ID, her ATM card, and her cell phone. He also had a gun in the car, and he was arrested and then extradited to Alaska.
And he did end up taking his own life when he was in custody in Alaska, and that would have been in December of 2012. Mm-hmm. All in all, we believe, or through our research, that he's responsible for 11 murders. It could be so much more.
Yeah.
I mean, he traveled so extensively. There's just no way of knowing how many victims he truly had.
Mm-hmm.
And he could have gone on indefinitely without being caught had he not lost control and broken every single one of his own rules.
That's right.
So we hope you enjoyed our story, and please hit that subscribe button. Stay spooky.
Stay spooky.